Here you are.
Great. So just a practical point. If you are signing up, I think there's an auto link that will come to you that will give you the 3 poems that are going to form our exploration today. I'm going to draw in more poetry than those 3 poems, but that's an automated setup. And I'll be sharing a screen a little bit for those poems as well, but you'll want the copy of them because there will be special interior notes you'll want to be taking as we do this dive together. And so that's a reason to sign up. So before we do an opening meditation, I always begin with an opening meditation. I'll start with a little bit of a preface for the workshop itself. There are many elements that are at the heart of this kind of a workshop. And as I was preparing today, the workshop came forward quite differently, of course, than last year, right? Because I'm different and you're different, and the world we're living in is different. And a word that came forward quite strongly for today was the word connection. Now, we throw that word out there a lot because it resonates with something within ourselves. It resonates with an innate longing. We have a tendency to long for connection. It connotes a certain meaning that when we have a connection that's life-giving, that our lives are enriched, and it becomes something that forms an influence in our choices. It forms a construct that leads us into things more deeply and may lead us, if we have the courage, to move away from things that do not resonate. And it can even form the reason we have tension in our lives, because we'll have connection points that aren't working for us, and we need to either figure out why, move through them, or just simply be able to say no instead of yes, along with a whole host of other things. And when we look at poetry that is of a monotheistic tradition, Christianity is one of them. That's one we're going to take here. Connection is at the foundation of the experience of Source. And it's a connection that has a relational quality. Islam is one that has that. Judaism has that. There are other traditions that have that as well. But connection is a way that a person self-realizes, comes to union with God or union with self. I think that as we grow and evolve, that word God is less narrowly defined and more formally defined. So I wanted to put that out there as a foundational theme for our gathering today. That's going to be a bit of what is evoked within you in regards to your own path. And that is a bit of the framework from which I'm coming forward as a friend and a facilitator in our experience today. It is not by any means the be all end all of our experience together. It's just the portal through which we're going to walk to open up the expansiveness of the reasons that you showed up, some conscious, some unconscious. I'm here consciously and unconsciously as well. So I'm not exempt from the mixed bag of motives that leads us into any situation. So connection, that's going to form our opening meditation as well. And in our opening meditation, I'm going to invite you into a spaciousness within yourself that is open to all connection that is truly for the highest good of you. And in that highest good for you is the highest good for all. As within, so without. The microcosm is the macrocosm. But I'm very comfortable saying you matter. The individual matters because therein is the essence of all. So in that opening meditation, we're going to open to the spaciousness of connectivity in all its wide and wild and variant forms, protecting the container of our connection here to be only for your highest good. And because of the resonance of the setting that we're going to step into, anything that is not for your highest good just simply is not going to come into the space. We vibrate with that integrity. We only create containers of that integrity. So I thought it was good to give that opening remark and setting. So with that, I invite you to close your eyes. And if there's anything within you that's crossed, I invite you to uncross it. If your legs are crossed, uncross. If your feet are crossed, uncross. If you're holding anything, set it down. Let your body be free of any engagement with itself or what you may be holding or how you may be sitting. In doing this, you make an act of trust. And that trust is that in freeing up any connection points, you broaden your boundary for a different set of connection points. So let's start by offering a silent, simple gratitude for being here. To be called into this group is pure blessing. For you have said yes to the one thing necessary in life. All else passes, but you are saying yes to the one unpassing part of yourself. And in that act of integrity, you contribute to create the highly resonant space in which we will explore today. Wow. And if you will, allow yourself to move your awareness beyond time and space, to let yourself sit in circle with those who are present in this workshop. And where we sit can be anywhere that works for you. While you may think it's imagination, in some way, it's time travel. And we sit together, soul beside soul beside soul. And as we sit together, we sit in circle. And I invite you in this circle to allow your left palm to face downward upon the right palm of the person to your left. and your right palm to face upward, touching the left palm of the person on your right. Together we sit in this oasis. And bring the focus to the region of your heart and your heart chakra. Again, a physicality, a subtle energy, and a symbol of the place wherein the essence and the soul may be found. Just an entry point, not a location. And become aware that there is a pulsing light in this part of your being. And allow the pulsing light through your intention to magnify and amplify through the body. And allow this pulsing light through your intention and awareness to extend through your subtle energy, touching all that you sit in circle with and expanding into the space. And as one collective heart and one collective, we resonate and we create the space and the openness for true transformation to happen together. And within and around our circle, invite in all deep connections that you have. Loved ones, friends, spiritual beings, guides, mystics, gurus, saints, goddesses, gods, all beings. Invite in and recognize that they too are here in the space that we form that is sacred. And now recognize that within you, there are desires that can be expressed in a word or two or three. Bring those desires into our circle silently. Joy, peace, insight, fulfillment, healing, love. Whatever they may be, with no censorship. And allow this chant that would have been chanted by the poets that will guide us today, allow it to expand you into a greater place of receptivity and surrender. Victime Pascali laudes, immolem Christiani, agnus redemitor ves, Christus innocens Patri, reconciliavi peccatores, nos et vita duello, conflix et emirando, dux vitae mortuus, regnat vivus, dic nobis Maria, quid vidis in via, sepulchrum Christi viventi, et gloriam vidi resurgenti. Scimus Christum surrexisse, a mortuis fede, tu nobis victore, miserere. And in that, I invite you to bring your palms together in front of your heart and bow to yourself as the place wherein the beloved, the divine, the source delights to dwell. And in that bow, when you are ready, open your eyes. All right, my friends, thank you for setting such a powerful space. So I want to begin with one of the poems that is not on the sheet that you have. And that is a poem by Catherine of Siena, a Christian mystic, who has, like most mystics, has a pretty remarkable background. The mystics give their yeses. Let's see, I'm going to ignore that. Give their yeses to this eternal essence that seems to really throb and pulse within each one of us. So I'm going to read her words and then jump in to a little theological setup before we take the poems. But this is such a delightful little poem. They kiss sometimes when no one is looking, the sun and the moon. Why are they so shy before us? Haven't we all seen someone making love? I wept for 3 days once because God would not touch me. For is it not a bride's right to know God? I have seen what I want in heaven's shop. Crazed I have become for this. God was sitting in a window one day when I walked through sky's sheets. So with any mystic poem, we can we could pretty much take just that poem and not exhaust it in the next hour and a half. I start with that poem because it's easy to enter into a workshop that has a lineage or a tradition. We all do it, and bring preconceived notions that are attached to the lineage and the tradition. And that one right there breaks open a lot of the mainstream understanding of Christianity. Here you've got a mystic talking about the sun and the moon making love, talking about experience God as a bridegroom that is found in the elements of creation, and that speaks with audacity and confidence that the individual's right is to have God touch her at all times in the ways she wants, and that she can, in her expansiveness, walk through the sky, a symbol, walk through the sky, and just see God in a window, like you're window shopping, and say, I'll take that. So the imagery there is pretty provocative, and I think it really invites us to go beyond the constructs we may have with any lineage. Here I want to point to Christianity, and my background is highly Christian, even though I too have become spacious, catching it up but not limited by it. It evokes us in our own path to always go beyond our own limited ideas about things. Again, it's not the limited idea that culture sells us or society sells us or religious history sells us. It always comes down to the intimacy with what we accept as true or not. And the poem invites us to open up to the experience itself that it points to discover ourselves within it, and from that discovery, find the way that we might speak to it.
Kimberly, can I ask a question? I didn't see that poem in the list. Is it?
No, I purposefully did it spontaneously, because we're going to use the list poems as the exploration, and I wanted to set the stage for my opening comments. I'm happy to send that poem along. Anything that is here, I'm happy to put in writing for you as well.
I just loved it, and I was looking for it, trying to reread it, so that's why I'm asking. And I probably missed what you were saying before.
It's okay.
I had to run to the restroom.
Jumping in, and anybody else can jump in at any time. Honest to goodness, so we're all contributors here to the experience. So with that, I want to set the stage then with the mystical experience that Christian poetry sets us up for. I mentioned one word, connection, in the beginning, and that lies as the current of this, because the encounter of self little s with self big S, the encounter of our individual selves with the universal, the encounter of us with God, creator, divine, source, whatever language you want to use. And I'm going to use language, obviously, that I can't keep giving all those descriptors to, but you stay faithful to your language, that there is something so sacred that we call covenant. And if you look at the etymology of covenant, you will see that it is a binding agreement between two individuals. So you have in all of the poetry that we're going to look at today an operating assumption that the connection has the character of covenantal relationship, which means it's a reciprocal answering to for the sake of union, for the sake of fulfillment. And it's reciprocal. It is us responding, engaging with, and it is us being engaged with and being pursued by. So that's the nuance that sets up this entryway. You will find in the writings of other traditions that that's not always the case. But where we are given the opportunity here in this moment is to recognize that the world is filled with many fragrances, and all fragrances can intoxicate us. The fragrance of a rose can intoxicate us, just like the fragrance of a gardenia can, just like the fragrance of another flower. And one doesn't exclude another, but rather coexists to form a larger fragrance even. So we're talking about a specific fragrance here that we're exploring. And that exploration for you is the covenantal experience of you with, and you can fill in that blank, I don't need to know it, you with the sacred covenant of you with, that in its generative quality, in its surrender into, in its active opening up to, lets you become fully who you're meant to be. Isn't that just so consoling? Now, as somebody that has been all my life incredibly relational, I find incredible consolation always in the discovery that I'm not alone. That's my path. That not only do I have a beloved breathing into each breath that is my own, but that I also have many friends along the way. You are friends that I don't know hardly, but we are friends in this moment. Sarah is a deeper friend. I have many spiritual friends that have been in form or have never been in form. And that for me is a very big, important part of my own path. It may or may not be for you, but that is for me. But that relational quality is what we're speaking to here, whether it comes in form or whether it is formless. So the purpose of our exploration, to reiterate, is to provide the context for the covenantal aspect of your path, to open up new doors to your true self. And again, even as you probably, even no matter what your path may be, you probably have elements within yourself that are developing an observation self, a reflective self, a higher self, and a lower self. We have all these relationships, even in our schizophrenic selves, that speak to what we're talking about. But ultimately, what we're moving into, I would say, and you need to answer this question for yourself, but I would say would be the nameless among all of that, the dissolution, the dissolving of the I, thou into the being, capital B, itself. And from that place of being comes the integration that we dance easily within this language, and none of this language hangs us up, but rather becomes just another way we point to the being that we are, that we speak to, that we explore. And we find that within our daily lives, not only in these isolated moments of exploration, but then in our daily lives, we can be the roles, we can be the identities, we can be the position, but we are informed wholly by the being that we are. I would say that that is consciousness coming into the form in all its fullness. And in that, we experience fruits that we might call joy, peace, compassion, resonance, union, insight, miracles, synchronicity, freedom, utter freedom, ultimate connection at all times without any tension. So we begin to experience those fruits in wide and varied ways amidst the many contrasts that go into our lives as they are today. So that's the setup for our exploration. What we're going to do to begin is an exercise. And it's an exercise that's very individualized. And at the same time, I'm going to invite you to share. So I'm going to share the screen with my poem. Okay. Let me move this over. I'm going to move this up. So we're going to start with this poem, Dark Night, Noche es Oscura. I led a retreat in Spain back in 2019 where we went to the very place this was written, which was pretty awesome. And I have the original Spanish right here I've had since I was 18 and I'm 55 now. So this is a profound poem. And I honestly think it's largely misunderstood. In the Spanish culture, it's noted as the poem of illumination. In our popular American culture, it's oftentimes a context for understanding ourselves amidst our own times of difficulty, which we might frame as a dark night. But the poem is actually understood as not really a dark night, but rather the place of true illumination. We're not going to approach it from either vantage point. I don't want the setup. What I'm going to do for this is I want you to look at the poem, and I am going to slowly read the poem. Now, if you do not have a piece of paper or a pen, I want to give actually 30, 60 seconds to let you gather a piece of paper or a pen, or open your notes on your phone. You're not going to take notes, but you will want to write down one or another phrase. So if you don't have that, I'm going to just give a couple seconds for you to gather that. And if you're choosing not to take this workshop that way, that's okay too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something that's a divine reading of this text, which means we've already set the energetic space. So we're already really primed for insight to come from these words. And I'm going to go ahead and read the poem. And I want you to start by closing your eyes and not watching the words. Then I'm going to pause. Then I'm going to read these words a second time. And as I read them the second time, I want you to watch the words as receptively as you can. So not going out towards them where you're trying to grab a word, but rather being like a big tilled soil that you're letting the words come to you. And in that second time that I read the words, I want you to notice what words jump out at you, what words come towards you. And if you have this printed up, you can watch them on your page that you have printed up. Okay, so first we're going to start by closing your eyes. And just let the words land on you, any way they want to land on you. On a dark, secret night, starving for love and deep in flame. Oh, happy, lucky flight. Unseen, I slipped away. My house at last was calm and safe. Blackly free from light, disguised and down a secret way. Oh, happy, lucky flight. In darkness I escaped. My house at last was calm and safe. On that happy night, in secret, no one saw me through the dark, and I saw nothing then, no other light to mark the way, but fire pounding in my heart. That flaming guided me more firmly than the noonday sun, and waiting there was the one I knew so well, who shone where nobody appeared to come. O night, my guide, O night more friendly than the dawn, O tender night that tied lover and the loved one in the lover fused as one. On my flowering breasts, which I had saved for my love alone, God slept, and I caressed and fondled him with love, and cedars fanned the air above. Wind from the castle wall, while my fingers played in his hair. Its hand serenely fell, wounding my neck, and there my senses vanished in the air. I lay, forgot my being, and on my love I leaned my face. All ceased. I left my being, leaving my cares to fade among the lilies far away. Before opening your eyes, notice any stirrings within your body, mind, or heart. Any sensations, colors, words, emotions, thoughts, just notice. And upon opening your eyes, write down any of those sensations or responses that you had. All right, so I am going to read this a second time. And this time you're going to watch the words. And again, you're letting the words come to you. You're not going towards the words. You can play with the energy of what that means as well, if you'd like. And again, what I want you to do is note any words or phrases that jump out at you. They'll come through you undoubtedly. It will happen. And it's okay if it's more than one. It's okay if it's numerous. Just try to note them. All right, so watching the words. On a dark, secret night, starving for love and deep in flame. Oh, happy, lucky flight. Unseen, I slipped away. My house at last was calm and safe. Blackly free from light, disguised and down a secret way. Oh, happy, lucky flight. In darkness I escaped. My house at last was calm and safe. On that happy night, in secret, no one saw me through the dark, and I saw nothing then, no other light to mark the way, but fire pounding in my heart. That flaming guided me more firmly than the noonday sun, and waiting there was the one I knew so well, who shone where nobody appeared to come. O night, my guide, O night more friendly than the dawn, O tender night that tied lover and the loved one in the lover fused as one. On my flowering breasts, which I had saved for my love alone, God slept and I caressed and fondled him with love, and cedars fanned the air above. Wind from the castle wall, while my fingers played in his hair, its hands serenely fell, wounding my neck, and there my senses vanished in the air. I lay, forgot my being, and on my love I leaned my face. All ceased. I left my being, leaving my cares to fade among the lilies far away. I'm going to give you just a little bit to write down or note those words or phrases that jumped out at you. In just a couple more seconds. Stop share. Hey, everybody. So in our Western psyche, we have a great skillfulness with jumping into analysis and interpretation. There's advantages to that. Probably a lot of our technology is coming about because of how skillful we've become. However, when it comes to this transformational work, at times we can limit the true shifting that we're looking for. This is what we're looking for. We're looking to shift into the fullness of our being, because we'll go right from experience to story around it, or belief around it, or interpretation of it, or analysis, and even more right into the action steps. I can't tell you how many times I brought in to speak a lot in places. I can't tell you, well, you probably all know, how popular it is to have a title that says 3 steps to realizing your potential, 10 steps to healing that trauma, right? We're heightened into these very quick transactional action steps. And that is a skillfulness we want to hold on to, but we don't want it to be the master, especially in work like this that is really deep fundamental shifting that can happen effortlessly and quickly if we err more on the side of allowing and being in the mystery, and a little less on the side of stepping right into interpretation. I'm going to tell you a joke, and then we're going to get into what you wrote down. So there's this, and I'll tell you, the first time I told this joke, I was still straddling being a I know it would be surprising as a woman, but I was a Catholic minister. At the same time, I was doing totally non-lineage based work. And I was in this one church setting, and I started this parish mission talk with a joke. And I think you'll find the joke really funny. It was really, so in the joke, it starts like this, that every human being is given an angel and a devil throughout their lives. And the angels are always trying to support you and knowing good and being protected and all that. And the devils are always there to kind of sabotage everything. And the devils would have quarterly meetings so that they could discuss their wards, us. And they would gather to talk about their troubles and how they could do a better job. And in one of the meetings, one devil went up to another in one of the breakout sessions. He said, "Oh my gosh, I heard that your guy got a piece of the truth. He experienced the truth." And the other devil looked at him. He said, "Don't worry, I'll just get him to make a dogma out of it." Well, I told this joke, and there's like, 200 people sitting there in this gathering, and they're all Catholic. And at first, everyone starts erupting with laughter, and then everyone gets scared that it's not okay to laugh at the joke. So it erupts with laughter, and everyone's like, they're looking like, is it okay? Like, is it okay that I laughed at that? So our goal, if you will, here is to open up you experiencing the freedom of embodying the truth and avoiding the tendency towards quick interpretations, quick analysis, quick knowing what it means, unless it's the knowing that has taken you to your core. We know the difference, right? I know that if you're in this workshop, you have known those moments that have, in a sense, reduced you, the falling of the self, reduced you into a presence that so vulnerable and tender. And you know the difference between that and a quick interpretation that maybe keeps the experience a little at arm's length because it keeps you a bit in control of what's happening for yourself. So I'm inviting you to the former on this. All right. So take a look at what you wrote down or you noted from the poems. And I would like to ask that one person step forward and unmute with one word or phrase that came towards you, that jumped out at you. And what I'd like to do is, if you will allow me, if you will trust me, with that one word or phrase, I'd like to offer a facilitation to unpack what's moving there within you in that one word or phrase. And tangentially, I'll invite more than one person to do this. We don't have the time to do everybody. You can privately, if you don't step forward, use this same entry point, the same technique to do it for yourself. So do we have a volunteer, one person with either one word or phrase that came towards you that really speaks to you?
I'll volunteer.
Great. Okay, I'm going to pin you.
Okay.
Just so I'm, all right. So what's your one word or phrase? And welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. Forgot my being.
Forgot my being. So if you were to respond quickly without reflection with forgot my being, what are 3 or 4 descriptors that arise within you? Descriptor would be a color, a texture, a movement in the body, a sensation, an insight.
Softening. Swaying. and warm.
Wonderful. So let's start with softening. So when that phrase came towards you, in what ways did you soften?
Uh, like more space inside. Is that what you mean?
There's no right or wrong.
Okay.
With you in the process, you are spot on. I can feel the presence in what you're saying. So I feel that you're right there, if that offers you affirmation.
Thank you. Yeah, like an unfurling kind of.
Right. And what's happening within you as that's happening, the softening and the unfurling? Is there something within your mind or heart that's following along with that?
Yeah, it feels like I can um, um, take up space and um, I'm trying to not think of the not be anxious, but the actual what's happening. I guess be present. It's like not being afraid, or I'm not sure of the actual word.
Okay, thank you. No, those are really, really good descriptors. And so along with that, then you experienced a swaying in that phrase. How might you speak to that swaying?
Well, I opened my eyes early and I saw the trees swaying. There's a little wind here, and that felt really, I felt like they were reflecting how I was feeling.
Right, I can feel that. Right. And so was warm a quality of these two things, or is it in addition to it?
Um, I think it's in addition.
So speak to the warm. Was the warm through your body? Was the warm through your subtle sense of presence? What was the warm like?
Yeah, it was I think subtle, but also physically and yeah, and I'm noticing a lot's coming in. I'm getting kind of nervous. I'm doing this wrong, which I know I'm not. It's just bizarre. I'm noticing my mind start to yell, or or the devil or whatever. It's trying to turn this into a dogma or something. I don't know. I mean, not a dogma. I'm on the other end.
I really respect you bringing that in. It's such a natural part of our humanity that we go to these deep levels. We're conditioned to want to frame it and provide false senses of security around it. It's so normal. It's not unusual. So you're not doing anything wrong. You're just experiencing a part of yourself that's simultaneously going, wait, we're in the mystery. Wait. Is this okay? Is it safe? Are we going to be okay? So you can rest assured that really happens for most all of us. It's a natural mechanism. So allowing that to be there at that same time, let's go back to that warmth. That warmth is a sensory experience, but I'm hearing you say that it's even beyond what your senses are experiencing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so no. So then what your descriptors are saying, the softening, the swaying, and the warmth, what might they lead you to as a way of understanding what's arising within you in that phrase, for God my being? What's the understanding on a soul level that's coming forward with that?
Actually, just what came just a moment ago was it felt like my heart, like I don't know the words, but essentially just being more in my heart, more present in my heart. And I'm laughing because it's hard to explain, but also, this is not why I'm laughing, but I have a tendency to be kind of tight and guarded. Or I don't know if it's a tendency, but I get really mental, and I'm rambling a bit here. But yes, more in my heart, like feeling from my heart, which is a tender place.
Right. And I really can appreciate that you're able to use words that are expressing emotion. At the same time, you're expressing an experience that's much more on a soul level.
Mm.
So the experience of forgot my being, everything that you've described to reflect back to you, is an experience of that deepest sense of self that doesn't really have boundaries and is free from all these different constraints, but then begins to show up first and foremost through some of the feeling sensations that you're having.
Yeah.
Right there, it's coming forward that way. So therein alone is where we can stop. You've done all of the movement right there, and we have, I don't like the words accomplished, but for lack of a better word, there can be a stop point there. It doesn't have to move into a, what am I meant to do next? What comes from here? How do I make sure I stay in this place for the rest of my life? Right? Don't we all want that? Like, we come to this place and we're like, this is it, I've arrived, and it's never going to change ever. because of because of the elusive, timeless nature of what you've just touched within yourself. And if I were to offer just one takeaway with that, is to know that that pervading sense of yourself is constantly seeking to express itself as you constantly. So there's no failing, there's no missing the mark. The process is the awakening into that this is constantly it. And so in as much as we miss most of the moments in our lives, most of us do, in that fullness sense, we're marginally there. But these moments remind us that this is the fullness of life, and it's constantly expressing itself. So our simple call, if you will, is the stoking and the awakening to it over and over again, until it becomes the stable place wherein we live and move and have our being. So that was wonderful. You opened up and went there, so you were already there, but you shared so seamlessly. Thank you for that courage.
Thank you.
Yeah, good.
Much appreciation.
So let's take one other person, and then I want to give a short bathroom break because we're already more than an hour in. So let's take one other person, and then we'll take a break. Who would like to come forward next? Do I see Becky going off mute?
Well, I was looking at the 4 phrases I wrote down. Oh night, my God.
Oh, night, my guide. So with that phrase, same formula, if you will, what might be 3 descriptors that come forward? These are sense-oriented, texture, color, image, concept. What comes forward as that phrase touches you?
Well, before that phrase, I wrote down blackly free from light, in darkness I escaped. When I was growing up, I did not love the night. I'm basically a sunshine person, but I also love the stars, and you cannot see the stars if you don't have the darkness. And the stars are also a god, and they have been for millennium. And it's been a wonderful experience for me to get to know the stars. They are some of my best friends. And they are seasonal, and they are stars for every season. And when I say goodbye to Orion in the spring and Orion comes back in the fall, it makes me feel like God is in his heaven and all is right with the world, even if it is not. So there is something fixed in my life, and I appreciate that. So I think the reason that grabbed me is the night has been a guide for me in many ways over the last 3 decades.
Wow, what a beautiful share. Thank you, Becky. So let's take that. So the night has been your guide. So when that phrase came to you, oh, night, my guide, he even has an exclamation point after it in his text, oh, night, my guide. It's like he's shouting it. When that phrase came forward to you, what was one emotion? I don't want to read into, I hear what you're saying. And so there are certain movements and illuminations happening within you in your experience of night. What is a sentiment that arises within you? How might you put that into one word? And not one word that catches it, just one of many words. So what might be one word? And if it's hard, I can...
Maybe an anchor. I never have thought about this before. But like the North Star, if you find the North Star, you have a guide. You know your direction. You know the 4 directions on your compass. And it's also a beacon, can be.
Wonderful. So anchor and beacon, awesome pointers. So with the word anchor, what does that leave you feeling when you think of having an anchor? What
it feels good.
It feels good, right? Does it feel secure? Does it feel...
Yes, that might be an illusion, but you can live under the illusion that an anchor can be a type of security.
All right. And a beacon. So a beacon, what does that evoke within you? So with the word beacon, that the night stars and the night guiding you as a beacon, what arises within
God? You have a God even in the darkness. And one light can get rid of the darkness.
Does it
I think that's a commentary on life.
Does it give you confidence? Does it give you freedom? Does it give you certainty? What are some of the sentiments that are coming to you that are tied to it that go unspoken?
Maybe all of the above.
Right. So then when that phrase jumped out at you in your path, your experience of how might you give words to presence or self or God source, or what's your languaging around that?
Maybe not understanding the question. How about saying that again?
Sure. How might you speak of the notion of God or creator or divine? What's a word you use? I want to be sensitive to your language.
I would use all of those words.
Okay, so let's use the word God. So in your experience of that phrase, your covenantal relationship that happens within you, that as you're present to that in the night, which is the mystery in life, really, right? We're more in darkness than in light. In the night, you experience in this presence certainty, freedom, a sense of confidence that you can be who you're meant to be because you're anchored and you're going to be guided. Am I reflecting what you're saying correctly?
Somewhat. A brilliant night sky, really most night skies, but a brilliant one is a very spiritual thing for me.
Right, right. And goes even
But
beyond
it
words.
brings me very close to what I think of as God.
Right, right. So very evocative. So thank you. Thank you. And right therein, just kind of taking the unpacking of it a little bit, you let us, I can really enter into the brilliance of the night sky as you're speaking. I'm experiencing the presence in that by your unpacking it a bit more. So hopefully you're finding that it's filling you as well. And thank you for sharing. And that too is right simply where we want to be. From there, once again, just like with Melissa, we don't need in this moment to have all the action steps or know what all the takeaways are, because to be in the fullness of presence of ourselves, of God, to be in that fullness contains therein all intelligence, all knowing, all past, present, and future. So thanks for opening that up in such a magnanimous way for us. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. You
Good.
opened it for me too.
Good. So we're going to take a really short bathroom break and just get a chance to get up and move your bodies. And we'll move into the second part of our workshop with the poetry and move on to some new poems when we come back. If we were doing a day long, we'd have a chance to cross share quite a bit more. But I think by two sharing, each one of us can really open up some of our phrases ourselves. At least I hope. You can always reach out to me privately if not. So I'm going to put myself on mute and we'll be back in it's 12:11. So let's be back by about 12:13.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, everyone. All right. So that was just a little taste of where we can go with some of this mystical poetry. What I really wanted to provide for you during this time is, since the title of the workshop was specifically Poetry of Christian Mystics, I wanted to let us create spaciousness around the portal that poetry is and around the unique expression that happens when somebody that we might use the word mystic puts something down in words. So I'm a big believer that this mystic idea is an aspect of who and what all of us are. I don't think it's something that needs to be attained. I don't think some are mystics and some are not. I think it is part of our essential nature, and the entering into the mysterious realms of ourselves, the realms that can be a little bit confusing at times, is one word to put it, is an aspect of our mystical nature, that we have this paradox. We're a living paradox, right? Because we've got this kind of like time space thing that we got going on here that is quantifiable to a certain degree. And yet much of what we are is much more qualitative and much more spacious and cannot be so reduced to quantifiable measures. That's helpful, but it can't be reduced to. And when we talk about a mystic who has poetry of any background or no background, I've got some awesome poems of people that didn't hail from any tradition. What I have always experienced through those particular setup of words is that they're articulating an experience that has taken them beyond the bounds of the quantifiable. And why is that important? Why couldn't we just try to live this life that we have that's so short only according to the measures that we can quantify, that we can articulate clearly in black and white? Why might it be important? You have to come to that yourself, but I'm going to give you why I think it's important. I use the phrase, the one thing necessary, in our opening meditation. It came forward spontaneously, but it points to the why. When it comes to being all that we are meant to be, we are called to care about what is necessary in that process. And we are called to hold as unnecessary what is unnecessary. We aren't called to not care about the things that aren't of an essential nature, but we're called to develop a discernment and a skillfulness to notice what's necessary in my self-realization process, what's really imperative, and what is not imperative, but may matter in this lifetime, but is not imperative to the self-realization process. And how can my yes to the essential fuel and add to my ability to show up in this lifetime in all these other details? So there is this kind of coexistence. And I used to dislike the word discipline. And I'm part of it. I'm an Aries, and Aries like to go with these kind of impelling fire through life. And the word discipline always, for me growing up, had this connotation of hard work and sacrifice and giving everything up and being bound, I've got to do this every time at 5 a.m., this kind of narrowing down on. And I was convinced that in my love affair with the divine happened consciously when I was about 5. So I was convinced that I could grow and become who I was meant to be without being a person that was all about discipline in that idea of discipline. And I knew that I just had to find what was a different way to go about that. How do I be faithful to the focus and the intention and the wholehearted surrender into what's necessary without becoming, in my mind, a rigid, narrow, practice deemed person? And I discovered a definition of discipline that satisfied that. Discipline is simply remembering what you want. So in doing this feast for the soul, which is all about that, right? Coming to the banquet of your own soul, which is what every human being from where I stand really wants. We really want that kind of nourishment and communion and connection and transformation. We really want that. And discipline is simply remembering it, not occasionally, not once a day, but upon every breath. So within that, you have, as I pointed out, many fragrances that can at any given moment intoxicate us with their way of realizing that and how that happened. And here we have some Christian mystical poetry. And in Christianity, I mentioned the covenantal relationship. There is also another very interesting quality in the Christian mystical experience, and that is an incarnational spirituality, which means that the divine is ecstatically pouring itself into and showing up in and as creation. You will get that in all poetry that has a Christian basis to it that we might deem mystical, that incarnational spirituality. Now, for any of you that have had a background in that tradition, you will find that most of the time, because I've been spending 30 years being of service to help people heal this division, there's a separation between the spiritual and the material through a misunderstanding of the incarnation experience. For the mystic, there is the intoxication that the heavens proclaim the glory of God, that day unto day tells the story and night unto night reveals the message, that in a leaf, the greatest bliss and union can happen for the rest of your life. That all we need is to be still and realize that the soul center is God. You have this constant, enduring proclamation of this particular fragrance, that the incarnational spirituality of Christianity is that the fragrance and kiss of God is the very creation, including ourselves. So with that, I want to move on to the secondary poem, which is a liberal translation that I think hits the heart of what Teresa of Avila. Oh, and by the way, so there's two statues behind me. Tara is the beautiful goddess one you see there, a bodhisattva or Buddha goddess. And right next to it is Teresa of Avila, hand-painted statue from Italy. So this is one of her poems. I'm going to read this poem and then we're going to break it open a bit. And then after I break it open a little bit, I want to open it for one or two insights or questions that come forward from this poem for you personally in this moment that affirm or reaffirm or open a new doorway to yourself in self-realization. So here's Teresa. When your soul was born, it was like a still ocean that had yet to experience its infinite life. God then came to the shores of our souls and gazed upon the immaculate splendor that God's heart had created. She then took off his clothes and dove into us. Nothing on their own have your arms ever done. The movements of your feet are caused by the waves God stirred. Life baptizes life wherever it falls. And every religion and all upon this earth is a shadow. A shadow may move, but it has no real power of its own. Though it can affect the weak and frighten them, and humans can use that darkness to exploit others. As I found the source of all we do, as I found the source of all our desires, so humble God became and admitted, yes, I caused all things. Once again, a poem that we could spend weeks unpacking. So what's being said here in some ways, I'm not going to hit it all because of our timing, is that the soul has an origination, that there is a coming into being. You can take this or leave this, because that's not what everyone holds as true. Some hold that the soul is eternal in such a way that the identity of the soul is an intact, timeless essence. But here, Teresa's positing that the soul is born. It has a creative element, not born into the physical, born in its origination. And that soul, because of its timeless nature, was still and open and spacious, because it had yet to experience itself as a life. And a life has a certain idea to it, right? A life happens. It has a certain movement to it. It has a certain setup to it. But it has yet to experience its infinite life. It simply was. Not to say this is outside our realm of understanding. So not to say it is or isn't anything. And then in that origination process, this divine essence, the uncreated who that creates, came to the shore. Think of what a shore is. It came to the edge. And in coming to the edge of that meeting, it's like a coming to the membrane of it. It's like meeting it lip to lip. Coming to the very edge of it was enamored. And so enamored in that relational moment, so enamored that this infinite creative essence dove into the soul. And in that diving in, the life as we understand it began its process, so look at that. So it's a pregnancy, it's a making love and a pregnancy and a coming into being of soul and essence in an intimacy so great that they become one. And the life itself is realizing that it's a union of these aspects, soul and divine essence or essence. And in that, then, she draws the natural conclusions that everything that we are, because we're this birthed process of that making love, that in that, me doing this with my hand, I'm not doing of my own accord. And me walking across this room, I'm not doing of my own accord. And that because of that, and here's where we're getting very, very interesting, because of that, this life itself baptizes your life, and your life baptizes my life anew. Everywhere it falls, everywhere. Now, I find that incredibly delicious. The possibility that simply walking to my car is a baptizing gesture because of the movement, because the movement is coming from that union. With that, she makes an interesting conclusion for us to always reflect upon, and it falls back to the joke that I told, is her clarity that all religion is a shadow. Now, if you know anything about the life of Teresa of Avila, you will know that she uses a phrase after her name almost in all of her writings everywhere. Teresa, faithful daughter of the church. Teresa, daughter of the church, daughter of the church, daughter of the church. The church is my mom, daughter of the church. You know, it's like a mantra, or it's like a surname for her. So the very fact that she has that after her name and yet puts in her very writings that it's all a shadow is all a divine play. Because the container of her particular church experience was the sacramental baptizing that opened the doors for her realization here that life baptizes life wherever it goes. And if we could but realize that all the constructs in our lives, our family constructs, our cultural, our societal, our religious, that they are all simply shadows, we can let them serve the purpose that they're there, an occasion wherein we experience life baptizes life. And then we can let go of the trauma and the wounding that comes because of the expectations that are built in of what they're meant to be for us. The savior, the leader, the comforter, the guide. Because we all know that in our trajectory, in our history, all of those constructs always fall away at some point, always. I mean, almost every mystic has been burned at the stake, banned, ostracized, threatened. Teresa was able to escape the Inquisition up until 2 years before she died. But she was always floating below the radar because she happened to have a friend in high places, or above the radar, outside the radar, somewhere. She was floating in a way that she didn't get, she was never directly accused. But she did have some of her works burned. And she illumines us to say a shadow has no power of its own. And what's evoked here is not so much the external that I just pointed to, but the internal constructs that we accept as true. If we're going to fall and rise into the true self, it will mean that there will be a loss and a destruction to the internal constructs that we have that fall short of life baptizing life at every moment. Anything that doesn't fit the embodiment of that will eventually in some way fall away, sometime in dramatic destruction, sometime in the subtlety of simply letting a flower fall to the ground. It doesn't have to be painful. Sometimes it is, but it doesn't always have to be painful. And she points to something that is true, that she's making a statement. She says, though these shadows can affect the weak and frighten them, and they can be used to exploit, that there is no power there. She's also pointing to her take that wherever we rest into the constructs that we have set up that are not the spontaneous, wild, free life baptizing life, that we are ultimately reinforcing fear and coming from a place of weakness, not a judgment weakness, but the tender, vulnerable, oh, I'm weak there. I carry self-blame. I carry self-judgment. I carry shame. So there you have a very, very Christian experience that transcends all of those parameters, pointing to a relational way of self-realization. And many see Teresa as this fortress and illumined being, because not only was she incredibly prolific and insightful in her writings and her transmissions, she was really channeling. She wrote so much lit up by this, that's this Holy Spirit on her shoulder, because everything she penned, which the Spirit is right near her pen, was illumined and seemed to be a transmission of God. There is an image that goes along with her that sets her on a pedestal. And yet she herself, while well along the path of her own enlightenment process, it wasn't until her early 40s had her first truly unitive experience And that's after 20 years of running away from prayer. She would make time to talk about spirituality in place of actually being in solitude, because she was so afraid of being in solitude. What a better spokesperson to speak to these. And it wasn't until she was in her 60s, she died in her 60s, it wasn't until she's 60s that she realized, that means she embodied, she realized something profound. She said, all my life, I have been afraid of falling out of the embrace of God. So here is someone that is having unitive experiences, having what we call a divine marriage, having miracles come through her, founding 17 monasteries, having healing happen for herself and others. She's dramatically in the current of God, if you will, dramatically in the current, caught up in it. And yet she says in her 60s, all my life, I have been terrified of falling out of the embrace of God. And all these steps led her to the realization. She said, but then I realized that I can never fall out of the embrace that I am always already within. I love her for that. I love that she shares with us the reality of her experience, so that we can understand that each one of us, and I like your word unfurling, Melissa, each one of us is unfurling into our self-realization. And she points to that by showing that while these words are coming through her and she tastes them at any given moment, that she's not them 100% until not long before she actually passed away. So I'd like to open it up for someone to share a question around any of this, or an insight with our group, a question or an insight, or something that just strikes you, or a phrase that jumped out at you. And we'll give room for just a couple shares here. And if you're able to go on your camera so people can see you, that's awesome. And it's okay if not.
I just don't want to hog the time. So I'll wait if somebody else wants to say something that hasn't.
Well, thank you, Melissa. Is there somebody that would like to jump in before Melissa? All right, you're on.
Thank you for all of that. And I was curious if you could say more about the baptize. I heard you say that a couple times. And I don't really have a background in that. I don't really know the symbology, or I don't know if that's a word. But anyways, I want to just say that felt really good what you said. And also I don't know if I follow it at all, which I think is great. That I didn't, meaning that I probably did follow it, but just not analytically, because it felt good. But the baptizing, I think I know, but I'm curious. Like as you said, you walk to your car and you're baptized. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right, and there is a lot of nuance there in how I'm referring to it. So the general understanding of a baptism is to assent to divinity or God in such a way that you're washed into that relationship. So in typical Christianity, a baptism would happen if you say yes, and then water is used in a consecration of that yes. And the yes is seen as reciprocal between you and God, source. And so here, Teresa is pointing to baptism being the very breath and movement of all that we are. And if you do go deeper into even Christian theology, you will find that its conception, coming into being itself, being conceived, is itself its own baptism, because baptism is here might be a consideration of looking at it. So if all's one and soul and timeless and eternity, and then you have an individuation process that comes, like well, now you're you and I'm me. But because we're coming into a certain dimension where we are individualized, there's a baptism in creating a relationship there that's a consecrated existence. And part of our moving into oneness, so that it becomes real and not kind of a heady abstract idea, right, is oneness, is realizing that there's this nuance of a I, thou, that's a baptizing of the oneness of being at any given moment. So that's what she's speaking to. And yeah, there you go. Thank you. Great. Who else would like to share something? And it's nice sometimes just to reflect and be on the receiving end. I love being part of workshops and just listening to everything. So, okay, well, I'm going to jump through to the third poem, and then we're towards the end of our time, and we'll bring it to a nice close with a solid meditation practice. So actually, what I'd like to do is involve the third poem in our meditation. So before we enter into that, does anybody have anything that they would like to bring to the table before we enter into that? All right, let's jump into it, because meditation.
I would, Kimberly, I would just like to thank you, but I have to leave. So thank you for being here. And Sarah, thank you for letting me be in the workshop. And I will hope to see y'all tomorrow, but it may not be until Monday. So
Great. Thank you for being here, Becky.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. So the time has been so rich, and it's been great to be with you. I love these explorations. So with that, I invite you to close your eyes. And once again, we sit as individuals and as souls here in a sacred moment together. Let's take just a few moments in complete silence to be present to all that has taken place, all that is stirring within us, all that has happened in our time, and all that will happen as we leave our time together. And in this quiet, open stillness and spaciousness, let the words of this last poem, as I tone it, give us consolation. The limbs of a tree reached down and lifted me, thinking I was its child. And in the meadows, my spirit becomes so quiet that if I put my cheek against the earth's body, I feel the pulse of God. Tell me the way you do that, birds. Enter the private chambers of my Lord. And they all sang, they just sang. I gathered it was time to become a musician, and I did. Years passed and the sky reached down one day and lifted me. The birds noticed and spoke. How do you enter the sun like that and know the pulse of God? We come back to our hearts just as we began, and the heart chakra. And I invite you to become aware of each heartbeat, sense or imagine. Bump, 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 bump. Notice in that heartbeat, like you did before, that there is a light, subtle, electromagnetic, and eternal. And with each heartbeat, that light amplifies through your own body. And the light of that heartbeat, that pulse of God, magnifies beyond your body, filling the space where you sit. And continues boundlessly, effortlessly to all creation. And as we very slowly bring our time to a close, let yourself receive the baptism of all the life that you are connected to. Just by being united to the pulse that is God in all things. And as we close, make the choice yourself right now to extend blessing to all the world, to all people, animals, plants, the earth itself, the sky. To send blessing and intentions for health and happiness. When you're ready, draw your palms together in front of your heart and open your eyes with Namaste. Namaste. Great to be with you all. I wish you all the best. Thanks for your deep shares and reflection and for being present in this life. Mhm.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Where are you at, Melissa?
I'm in Oregon. It's
Oh.
unusually sunny here. It's not usual.
I'm happy you've got some sunshine today.
Yeah, me too. Where are you at?
Boulder, Colorado.
You get a lot of sun.
We do get a lot of sun, and it's beautiful. It just snowed yesterday, and it's really sunny, so it's just very beautiful, like winter wonderland kind of look. Yeah. Great. Well, always feel free. You guys can always email me. I'll put my email in the always welcome to email me or jump in with anything else that I offer. Right, and Sharmila, great to be with you. And I think that Sarah I know some people had to jump off because of time, and I know Sarah is needed to jump off herself. So I'm guessing maybe let me stop the recording.